I absolved into that alms bright, knowing his ancestors abhorred me. They whispered behind my back, formed their eyes aback I spoke, and advised me like I didn't belong. But aback his sister effective the microphone to abase me publicly. I knew it was time to acknowledge my secret. Hey everyone, afore I acquaint you what happened that night, accomplish abiding you hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to booty turns you never saw coming. Trust me, you don't appetite to miss what happens next. My name is Destiny, and 3 years ago, I had found my bogey tail. Little did I know, I was about to access a daydream that would analysis aggregate I believed about myself. This is the adventure of how I went from actuality the woman they laughed at, to the woman who lard them speechless. It all started on a backing Tuesday in downtown Chicago. I was hasty to catch a cab, afterwards a business affair aback. This tall, handsome man, in an big-ticket suit, stepped adapted into the dabble I was trying to avoid. Water splashed everywhere, assimilation my presentation materials and my admired dress. Most people would accept aloof absolved away, maybe befuddled some money at the problem. But Jonathan didn't aloof apologize. He spent the abetting 2 hours allowing me recreate my presentation at a nearby coffee shop. He bought me a new dress, and somehow angry the affliction day of my week into article magical. I begin out later that Jonathan was the CEO of a tech aggregation annual billions. But in that coffee shop, he was aloof, a man who made me beam until my abandon hurt. He didn't know I had congenital my own consulting firm from the arena up, that I had developed up in the projects of Southside Chicago with a distinct mother who formed 3 jobs to accumulate us afloat. Our relationship grew slowly. Naturally, Jonathan would pick me up afterwards assignment, and we'd drive around the burgle talking about our dreams and fears. He told me about the pressure of active ancestors' business. I told him about belief by candle ablaze, aback the electricity was cut off, about professors who told me I didn't belong in their classrooms. 6 months into our relationship, Jonathan sat me bottomward, with a sear expression. "Destiny," he said, "I charge to acquaint you article about my family. They're not activity to understand us. They're not activity to accept you. I'm falling in love with you, and I don't appetite their benightedness to aching you. I should have listened to that warning. But I was young. I was in love, and I believed that adulation could conquer anything. I believed that if I just tried adamantine enough, if I was smart enough, acknowledged enough, affectionate enough, I could win anyone over. I was wrong. The original time I met Victoria and Amanda, Jonathan's mother and sister, I spent hours accepting ready. I chose a conservative fleet dress, fair earrings, and pumps that fabricated my anxiety hurt. I wanted to accomplish the absolute first impression. The moment I absolved into their abode in Lake Forest, I knew I had already failed. Victoria looked me up and bottomward, like she was analytical, a piece of appliance she was thinking about returning. Her smile was polite, but cold. "So you're Jonathan's friend," she said, emphasizing the chat friend, like it tasted bad. Amanda was worse. She was 28, 2 years adolescent than me, but she agitated herself like she owned the world. She looked at me like I was a curiosity, article alien that her brother had brought home for show. "Destiny," she said, testing my name like it was foreign. "That's interesting. Is that abbreviate for something?" "No, it's aloof destiny. My mother chose it because she said I was destined for abundant things." "How sweet," Victoria said. But her accent adapted it was annihilation but. "And what is it you do, dear?" I told them about my consulting firm, about the Fortune 500 companies I worked with, about the business I had built from nothing. I watched their expressions carefully, attractive for some sign of annual or acknowledgement. Instead, Victoria nodded affably and said, "That's nice, dear. Small businesses are so important to the economy." Small businesses. I had 15 employees and had aloof active a contract worth $2 million. But to her, annihilation I had congenital was insignificant. The blow of the black was a depth chic in subtle humiliation. They talked about bodies I had never met, places I had never been, experiences I had never had. Aback I mentioned that I had never been to the Hamptons. Amanda absolutely laughed. "Oh, you sharge go sometime," she said, admitting, "I suppose it's not absolutely your scene." What did that mean? What was my scene supposed to be? I smiled and nodded, and pretended that their words didn't cut me like tiny knives. Aback we assuredly left. Jonathan was quiet during the drive home. Finally, he said, "I'm sorry. They're not usually like that." But I knew he was lying. This wasn't unusual behavior for them. This was aloof Tuesday night with the ancestors, and I was the problem that had disrupted their perfect world. Aback, Jonathan proposed 8 months later. Anticipation things would change. Anticipation that already we were officially family. They would accept me. Our bells was beautiful. But alike on my bells day, I could feel Victoria and Amanda's disapproval like a cold wind. During the reception, I've overheard Amanda talking to her cousin near the bar. "Well, at Atomic she's pretty," Amanda said, "and I suppose Jonathan bear a session who could give him accouchement with some rhythm." I felt like I'd been slapped. But it was my wedding day, and I didn't appetite to cause a scene. So I swallowed my acrimony and pretended I hadn't heard. The months after our bells were a constant battle. Victoria would alarm Jonathan for family dinners and balloon to mention that I was invited. Amanda would post pictures of ancestors' gatherings on social media that I hadn't accepted about. Aback I did appear ancestors' events. They would talk about me through me, but never to me. The affliction allotment was watching Jonathan struggle. He admired his family, but he loved me too. And he was bent in the middle. He would accomplish excuses for their behavior, advance that maybe I was being too sensitive. I knew he wasn't trying to aching me, but every time he defended then, it acquainted like a betrayal. I started to agnosticism myself. Maybe I was actuality too sensitive. Maybe I was the problem. These were successful, educated, wealthy people. Who was I to catechism their behavior? But again I would bethink my mother's words from aback I was a little girl. "Baby, you don't accept to shrink yourself to accomplish added people comfortable. You accord wherever you choose to be." Things came to a head during a ancestor's business affair that I accidentally absolved in on. Jonathan had forgotten some abstracts at home, and I offered to accompany them to his office. When I arrived, I begin him in the conference allowance with Victoria and Amanda. Affidavit advanced beyond the table, all of them attractive, fatigued, and worried. "Oh," Victoria said aback she saw me. "Jonathan, conceivably we should continue this chat later." But as I angry to leave, I bent a glimpse of the affidavit on the table. Financial statements, accommodation documents, numbers that didn't attending good. Very not good. "Is everything okay?" I asked because I genuinely cared about Jonathan and his family admitting everything. "Everything's fine," Amanda said quickly. "Aloof. Some minor adjustments to our investment strategy. but I had spent years analyzing banking statements, helping companies cross crisis situations. I knew what banking agitation looked like, and this ancestors was in it up to their necks. Over the abutting few weeks, I started advantageous after-peace attention. Victoria had chock-full cutting some of her expensive jewelry. Amanda had abashed back into the ancestors' home, claiming she wanted to absorb added time with her mother, but absolutely because she couldn't afford her burgle accommodation anymore. Jonathan was alive best hours, taking added meetings, affirmation about things he wouldn't altercate with me. Meanwhile, my own business was thriving. I had aloof landed 3 new major clients, and my acquirement was up 40% from the antecedent year. I was actuality invited to allege at conferences. Actuality quoted in industry publications. But aback I shared these successes with Jonathan's family, they would nod affably and change the subject. One evening, I overheard Victoria on the buzz, discussing their financial difficulties and how they were exploring all options. The abutting day, Amanda fabricated an animadversion about how some people didn't accept the responsibilities that came with old money. How new money bodies didn't understand ancestors' legacy. I knew they were talking about me. Over 10 years, and I bought the debt. The allowance was completely silent. I didn't buy the company. I didn't booty control. I aloof bought the debt and forgave it. I gave this family an additional chance, and I did it anonymously because I didn't appetite them to feel answerable to me. I could see tears in Jonathan's eyes now. But here's what I abstruse tonight. It doesn't matter what you do for bodies who have already absconded, you don't belong. It doesn't amount how abundant you sacrifice, how abundant you give, how abundant you love. I looked at Amanda. So let me be clear about something. I am not an inappropriate accession to this family. I am not accession who needs to appear-sieve her place. I am not accession who married outside her class. My articulation grew stronger. I am a successful businesswoman who adored your ancestors from financial ruin. I am an admiring wife who put her husband's beatitude aloft her own comfort. I am an able woman who has endured 3 years of racism and cruelty with adroitness and dignity. I turn to abode the absolute room, and I am living affidavit that annual isn't determined by area you appear from, but by what you do with the opportunities you're given. The amphitheater erupted in chaos. Conversations exploded at every table as people candy what they had just heard. Victoria stood up from her table, her face an affectation of controlled fury. "This is not the adapted area for family discussions," she said. "You're right," I said, still captivation the microphone. "Family discussions should appear in private amid bodies who amusement each other with annual and love. Unfortunately, I've never been invited to participate in any family discussions." "Amanda," began her voice, "you had no adapted to baffle in our business affairs," she said. "I had every right," I said calmly. "I'm part of this family, whether you like it or not. And a back ancestors is in trouble. You help them alike, a back they don't deserve it." Jonathan assuredly stood up. He walked against the date with purpose. When he accomplished me, he captivated out his hand for the microphone. "My wife is right," he said, his articulation accustomed beyond the silent ballroom. "She has been treated poorly by my family, and I've accustomed it to happen. I've fabricated excuses aback I should except been ambitious that she be treated with respect." He looked at his mother and sister. Destiny adored our family. She adored our business, our reputation, our future. And she did it quietly, after allurement for recognition. She did it because she loves me. and she knew that accident, the ancestors' business, would abort me. His articulation grew stronger. But added than that, she's brought intelligence, compassion, and strength to our family. Instead of celebrating her, instead of welcoming her, we've advised her like she's not good abundant for us. He angry to me, taking my hands. I'm sorry, he said loud abundant for anybody to hear. I'm sorry I didn't assure you. I'm apologetic I didn't angle up for you. I'm apologetic I let them amusement you like you didn't belong when you're the best affair that ever happened to this family. I looked at Victoria and Amanda. I forgave your debt because I adulation Jonathan and because I believe in the ability of family. But I won't abide boldness anymore. I won't compress myself to accomplish you comfortable. I took abysmal breath. If you appetite me to be a part of this family, then amusement me like family. If you can't do that, again we'll advance a polite distance, but the canicule of attenuate cruelty and exercise abasement are over. The weeks that followed were transformative. Victoria and Amanda requested a private meeting with me. They came to my office, which I anticipate was significant. We owe you an apology, Victoria said, her voice softer than I had any time heard it. Our behavior has been inexcusable. We let our own prejudices billow our judgment. Amanda nodded. I was threatened by you, she admitted. Your aggregate I was aloft to accept I was, but you actually becoming it. You congenital something from nothing, and I inherited everything. I anticipate allotment of me resented that. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was honest. I don't charge you to love me, I told them, but I charge you to respect me. I charge you to amusement me like I'm allotment of this ancestors, because I am. Victoria nodded slowly. We'd like to try again, she said. We'd like to alpha over if you're willing. It wasn't easy. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. But gradually, things began to change. Victoria started including me in ancestors' plans. Amanda began alluring me for my advice. They introduced me to their company without qualification. Added importantly, Jonathan and I grew stronger. The secret was assuredly out in the open. I should have been attention you. He said one evening. You were bent in the middle. I said you were aggravating to adulation everyone, and that's not consistently possible. Sometimes you accept to choose. I choose you. He said simply. Every time I choose you. Attractive aback on that night at the charity gala, I apprehend it was the moment aggregate changed. It was the moment aback accuracy replaced pretense, when actuality replaced performance. I anticipate about that little babe from the South Side sometimes. The one who studied by candle ablaze and dreamed of a better life. I ambition I could acquaint her that the journey would be harder than she imagined. But I would additionally acquaint her that she was stronger than she knew, that she belonged wherever she chose to be. The truth is, we all accept moments aback we have to adjudge who we are and what we stand for. We all accept moments aback we have to accept amid shrinking ourselves to fit into added people's expectations, or continuing alpine and claiming our abode in the world. For me, that moment came aback I took the microphone and told my truth. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. It was the moment aback I chock-full allurement for permission to be myself and started demanding the annual I deserved. The family that already laughed at me now includes me in their decisions. The woman who alleged me an inappropriate addition now asks for my advice. The people who anticipation I didn't accord now understand that I belonged all along. And that's the assignment I appetite to leave you with. You accord wherever you choose to be. Your annual isn't bent by other people's opinions, their acceptance, or their approval. Your worth is bent by your actions, your character, and your abnegation to be diminished. Sometimes you accept to take the microphone and acquaint your own story. Sometimes you accept to angle up and speak your truth. Sometimes you accept to save the bodies who never anticipation you were worth saving. But aback you do. Aback you find the adventuresomeness to be authentically yourself. Article bewitched happens. You don't aloof change your own life. You change the lives of anybody about you. You become active affidavit that analysis is possible, that barriers can be broken, that annual isn't affiliated, but earned. If this adventure resonated with you, if you've any time acquainted like you didn't belong somewhere, or if you've any time had to find the adventuresomeness to angle up for yourself, I want you to appreciate that you're not alone. Your articulation matters, your adventure matters, and your attendance in any allowance is not an accident. It's a right. Hit that subscribe button if you accept that everyone deserves to be advised with dignity and respect, behindhand of where they appear from. Share this video with someone who needs to apprehend that they belong wherever they accept to be. And remember that your annual isn't determined by added people's opinions. Tell me in the comments about a time when you had to angle up for yourself, when you had to acquisition your voice, when others approved to black out you. Your story might be absolutely what Accession Abroad needs to hear. Remember, you don't need permission to be yourself. You don't need approval to booty up space. You don't charge anyone's validation to know your worth. You aloof charge the adventurousness to stand up, allege your truth, and refuse to be diminished. Thank you for listening to my story. Until abrupt time, keep animated your light. The apple needs what you accept to offer, alike if some people are too addled by their own limitations to see it. Break strong, stay authentic, and never balloon that you belong wherever you accept to. The irony was almost funny. If they abandoned knew that I was apparently the best financially stable person in their ancestors at that moment. The allurement to the anniversary Children's Hospital alms, bright accustomed, on expensive agenda, banal, with gold lettering. It was one of the most exclusive contests in the Burgle, where Chicago's aristocratic came to see and be seen, while autograph tax-deductible checks. You don't accept to go. Jonathan said aback. I showed him the invitation. I perceive these events aren't absolutely your thing, but I knew what he absolutely meant. He was trying to assure me from a session black of subtle humiliation. And I was annoyed of being protected. I was annoyed of hiding, tired of shrinking. I appetite to go, I said. We're married, Jonathan. I'm part of this ancestors, whether they like it or not. The night of the gala, I chose my outfit carefully. A beauteous black dress, chunk that bent the light. Shoes that fabricated me feel powerful. I wanted to attending like I belonged in their world, but like if I would never feel like I did. The amphitheater was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers casting dancing shadows on the walls, and Chicago's most powerful bodies, circuitous with champagne glasses and accomplished smiles. Victoria and Amanda were in their element, gliding through the army like they owned it. They aliened Jonathan to important people, included him in conversations. Fabricated abiding, he was seen with the adapted people. I followed behind like a shadow. The bashful bargain was filled with items I couldn't afford, even with my success. I watched Victoria bid on a carve, after alike looking at the price. Watched Amanda casually write an analysis for a weekend in Paris like it was a bridged change. Again came the speeches. The hospital administrator talked about the important assignment they were doing. Various donors were recognized for their contributions. That's when Amanda stood up and asked for the microphone. "I'd like to say a few words," she announced, her voice carrying beyond the amphitheater with confidence. "This alms is very important to our family, and we're so grateful to be actuality tonight with people who accept the accent of giving back." She paused, absolution her eyes sweep beyond the army before landing on me. Of course, not everybody understands the responsibilities that appear with privilege. Some bodies see contests like this as opportunities rather than obligations. Some bodies anticipate that marrying into a hand-sister's agency, you automatically accept the ethics that built that family. My affection started pounding. She was talking about me. In front of all these people, she was talking about me. It's adverse when inappropriate additions to families don't accept the accent of discretion, of alive one's place. But I accept that's what happens when people ally al fresco their class. When people from assertive backgrounds try to insert themselves into world's area they don't belong, that's a back something inside me snapped. I stood up, my chair scraping adjoining the marble floor. "Excuse me," I said, my articulation bright and strong. "May I accept that microphone?" The ballroom fell silent. Amanda's confident smile faltered as she looked at me, then at her mother, again aback at me. She had expected me to sit there and boot it, to accept her accessible abasement like I had accepted so abounding clandestine ones. "I don't think that's necessary," Victoria said from her table. "Oh, but I anticipate it is," I said, walking against the stage. My legs felt steady, my articulation acquainted strong, and for the aboriginal time in 3 years, I felt like I knew absolutely who I was and where I belonged. Amanda cautiously handed me the microphone, her eyes abounding with confusion and the aboriginal adumbration of abhorrence I had any time apparent there. The allowance was completely quiet now. Hundreds of Chicago's best able bodies, waiting to see what the inappropriate addition to the ancestors had to say. "Thank you," I said, my articulation accustomed calmly through the ballroom. "I appetite to acquaint you all a story. It's about a little babe who grew up in apartment activity on the south side of Chicago. Her mother formed 3 jobs to accumulate aliment on the table, and sometimes there wasn't abundant money for both electricity and groceries, so they chose groceries. I could see Jonathan in the audience, his face a admixture of pride and concern. I could see Victoria and Amanda, their expressions shifting from abashing to article that might have been panic. This little babe was smart, but she was told she didn't belong in avant-garde classes. She was talented, but she was told she didn't have the adapted connections. She was determined, but she was told that people like her didn't accomplish in places like this. I gestured about the ballroom, but she didn't listen. She advised by candle ablaze aback the ability was cut off. She formed 2 jobs to pay for college. She started her own business with $500 and a dream. And you appreciate what? She succeeded. The allowance was completely silent. Now that little babe, congenital a consulting close that works with Fortune 500 companies. She employs 15 bodies and has been featured in Forbes, Businessweek, and the Wall Street Journal. She has been accustomed as one of the top consultants in her field. I paused, letting my words bore in. But more importantly, that little babe learned something about family. She abstrus that family isn't about money or connections or the adapted aftermath name. Ancestors is about love, support, and continuing up for each other about the apple gets tough. I looked directly at Victoria and Amanda. Unfortunately, some bodies never learn that lesson. Some bodies anticipate that money makes them bigger than others, that the adapted aftermost name gives them the right to amusement bodies with animality and disrespect. My articulation grew stronger. But here's what those bodies don't understand. Aback, that little girl discovered that the ancestors she had married into was adverse banking ruin. When she began out that ancestors of wealth had been mismanaged to the point of bankruptcy, she didn't gloat. She didn't erring away. The blush drained from Victoria's face. Amanda's aperture fell open. Jonathan looked confused. Instead, she agilely accomplished out to her network. She abiding meetings, facilitated deals, and opened doors. And aback, that wasn't enough. Aback, the ancestors' business was still adverse collapse. She fabricated a decision that would change everything. I paused. Absolution, the restriction billed. She wrote a check, a claim check from her own account. $50 actor to save a family business that belonged to people who had advised her like she was worthless. The blow that went through the allowance was audible. She did it anonymously through a carapace corporation because she didn't appetite recognition. She just capital to save the ancestors that her husband loved. Alike if that ancestors had never abstruse to adulation her back. Victoria was staring at me with abhorrence and disbelief. Amanda looked like she might be sick. Jonathan's face was a canvas of emotions I couldn't read. But standing here tonight, alert to speeches about inappropriate additions and knowing one's place, I anticipate it's time for some honesty. It's time for everyone in this allowance to accept that worth isn't bent by area you appear from, but by what you do with the opportunities you're given. I looked directly at Amanda. The inappropriate addition to your ancestors isn't the problem. The botheration is a family so blinded by their own ageism that they can't see the absolution that's been standing adapted in advance of them. I want to acquaint you absolutely how this happened. I continued, the microphone abiding in my hands. 3 months ago, I was reviewing some banking abstracts that Jonathan had larbored. On his desk, I saw the numbers and I accustomed what they meant, because analyzing banking statements is what I do for a living. Jonathan was staring at me now, his face pale. The family business was 3 months abroad from bankruptcy. Not struggling, but complete financial collapse. 70 years of family legacy about to abandon because of bad investments and poor management. I looked at Victoria, the abode in Lake Forest, mortgaged to the hilt. The vacation home in Aspen already sold, though they've been renting it aback to maintain appearances. The family foundation that's declared to be funding this alms, empty. A babble went through the crowd. These were business people who accepted what I was describing. I spent weeks aggravating to figure out how to admonish in without interfering. I accomplished out to my network, approved to acquisition investors, arranged diplomacy with abeyant buyers, but it wasn't enough. The aggregation needed an actual banknote beverage of $50 million, aloof, to break afloat. I looked directly at Jonathan. So, I alleged my lawyer and had him set up a shell corporation, alleged Phoenix Holdings. I transferred 50 actor from my personal investment account, money I had earned and adored.